getting it wrong with extreme radical ideas.
Mr. Trump is hoping strong GOP results on Tuesday will spark momentum for his widely expected 2024 run.
Every seat in the U.S. House is up for grabs, along with 35 Senate seats and 36 governorships.
We've been ground zero for all of the election lies since the 2020 election.
We come on stage at a debate and we stand up for what we want to do for Arizona. And if you don't have the courage to do that, then you don't deserve the job.
It's a choice between two fundamentally different visions of America.
That was President Biden rallying voters here in the Empire State of New York. Welcome to Red and Blue. I'm Ed O'Keefe, coming to you from the CBS Broadcast Center here in the Big Apple, New York City. Thank you for joining us. We're all getting ready for Election Day because on Tuesday, Americans will be casting ballots in 35 Senate races, 36 races for governor, and for every seat in the House of Representatives. At this point, it's estimated $9.7 billion will have been spent on TV and digital advertising this cycle, according to Ad Impact. Campaign events have been held at arenas and stadiums, on campuses, in church basements, and at coffee shops across the country, and virtually through Twitter, TikTok, and, of course, Zoom. And amid polling showing unprecedented concern about the future of American democracy, let's not forget there are 308 Republican candidates on ballots across the country who've raised unfounded doubts about the validity or integrity of the 2020 election results. Tens of millions of Americans are poised to vote on Tuesday, but already more than 40 million voters have cast ballots, a midterm election year record high. For reports on the final day of campaigning and to look ahead to Election Day, we're joined by four of our CBS News colleagues in the battleground states. Caitlin Huey-Burns is in Philadelphia, Nicole Killian is in Kennesaw, Georgia, Manny Bajorquez is in Las Vegas, and Chris Van Cleve is in Phoenix. But we'll begin in the Silver State of Nevada, where Manny Bajorquez is tracking the key seats Democrats are trying to hang on to. Manny, former President Bill Clinton spent some time rallying in the state over the weekend. Let's listen to a little bit of what he had to say.
I have never felt more strongly that everything I worked for all my life is on the line now.
Manny, what else did we hear from the former president?
Well, he tried to remind voters to look at the right now, basically saying, you know, a lot of people will tell you that inflation is so bad because of the Democrats, because of Biden. But look at the bigger picture, that it's a global phenomenon, that there is higher inflation in other parts of the world, really trying to drill in that, in his view, democracy is on the line here. But I think it's telling that both former President Clinton and former President Barack Obama have been here campaigning for the Democrat incumbent Catherine Cortez Masto, but President Biden has not. And that's because the GOP has been driving home the message to voters here that the reason they're seeing inflation and gas prices going up, in their view, is because of bad economic policy on the Biden administration, and they're trying to tie the current senator to that.
Manny Bajorquez there in Nevada. It's going to be a long night and potentially a bunch of days as we await the results of what are traditionally close elections in Nevada. We thank you, and we'll be in touch with you, of course, throughout the next several days. Now, one of President Biden's cabinet members has been one of the most in-demand campaign surrogates for Democrats this election cycle. He's made more than a half dozen trips to states across the U.S. in recent months. He joins us now, and we should point out that Pete Buttigieg is doing so in his personal capacity, not as Transportation Secretary today, but as Citizen Pete, who, of course, is a popular Democrat. I heard you again today, Secretary Buttigieg, say in Nevada that this is a cost of living election. Did your party understand that soon enough and pivot appropriately, or is that contributing to why candidates all across the country may end up coming short on Tuesday?
I think one reason we're already doing much better than the norm for a party that has the White House going into a midterm is because Americans agree with us on economic issues as well as social issues. Look, here in Nevada and everywhere I've been campaigning, voters are upset, of course, that Republicans took away a woman's right to choose and are pushing hard for even more extreme national and state level abortion bans. But that doesn't make it any less important to talk at the same time about the economy. The economy is on everybody's minds. And that's exactly why we should not follow the Republican approach of dismantling Social Security at a time like this where cost of living is high. Folks are upset about gas prices. Here in Nevada, though, the Republican Senate nominee, Adam Laxalt, has worked at a law firm that defends big oil and has been defending big oil on the campaign trail. So I think we have a very, very strong message on economics. We shouldn't be afraid to come out swinging with it, even while we're also reminding voters about the importance of democracy, speaking to voters' concerns about extremism on the right, and again, stressing that we will be the ones to protect a woman's right to choose.
You've called the president's litany of accomplishments on COVID rescue, the Inflation Reduction Act, infrastructure, the, quote, big deal. But given that polls continue to show a majority of Americans don't think the president has done enough on the economy, and President and Democrats going to be, do you think they're going to be rewarded by voters for doing that work? And perhaps should Democrats have leaned a little more into the infrastructure bill, especially in reminding voters what it is Democrats had gotten done over the last year and a half or so?
Well, I do think so much has been achieved that it can actually be hard to keep track of it. That's why I'm calling it the big deal. You know, FDR had the New Deal. Teddy Roosevelt had the Square Deal. You can add all of these things up. They are a big deal, which is why I like to call them the big deal. The infrastructure legislation that, of course, is improving everything from transportation to water quality to energy infrastructure and the grid and internet access in our country, but also the Inflation Reduction Act, which represents the most significant climate legislation ever passed by any country ever. It also represents an important step in the global fight against inflation, which is a challenge everywhere in the developed world. But part of what we're doing to deal with it is steps, widely popular steps, I might add, like ensuring that we cut the price of insulin to $35 a month for people on Medicare. And I think it's important to emphasize that, you know, the only reason we don't have a $35 a month cap on insulin for everybody, Medicare or not, is because Republicans blocked it. So it's a good example of what could be achieved if we were able to expand our majorities in the Senate and in the House. I think we do need to continue emphasizing what's been achieved while also talking about the road ahead and not just looking at what we've done in the last couple of years, but what's next.
But you do politics well. You know that talking about things in the abstract or things that are coming in the future is tricky for voters who are often justifiably focused on the right now, right? They're thinking about what's right in front of them, what's going on. I've heard you and other Democrats say this. Inflation in this country isn't as bad as it is in somewhere like Germany. But you also know, because you traveled the country and you spent a lot of time in places like Nevada, that voters don't care about what's going on in Europe. They care about what's going on right here in this country. And repeatedly, the polling has shown they think the economy is in bad shape. They're sick and tired of paying high prices. Why continue to make that kind of argument that may or may not work?
Well, look, I think all of these arguments fit together. Look, on one hand, you've got an economy where unemployment is below 4%. That is a huge, huge deal. Unemployment has rarely been this low in recorded history. On the other hand, we have this battle against inflation. And I think it's worth pointing out that this is a global fight against inflation. But you're right. Most important to talk about the difference between what we want, what we are doing about it here, and what the Republican Party has proposed, right? They have promised to put Social Security on the chopping block, and this is one of those times that I believe them. They have said that they would put the entire economy at risk by forcing a showdown over the debt limit, risking default and an economic catastrophe in order to force some kind of cuts or changes to Social Security and Medicare. Those are everyday bread and butter, in your face concrete issues. Now, I could go on all day, and sometimes I do, about philosophical issues of democracy and how we stay a democracy. But when it comes down to the dollars and cents piece, I think right there we have a winning message, because this idea of just constant tax cuts for the wealthy is not only a mistake, in my view, from a policy perspective, but on the wrong side of what most Americans believe we ought to do.
Let me ask you real quick. Are you committed to serving the Biden administration for another 2 years, or do you have other plans?
Well, I serve at the pleasure of the president, but I'm excited to do this job for as long as he'll have me. It's demanding. It's something I'm proud to be part of, and I'm proud to serve on this president's team.
So if he wants to give you a promotion or a different cabinet seat, you would consider that?
Look, that's literally above my pay grade.
Yeah.
All I'll say is that we're on the official side. I'm doing everything I can to do a good job, and today I'm taking a day away from that to volunteer for something I think is incredibly important, which is to get great Democrats elected. I feel like on most of the issues, most Americans agree with us, but it doesn't count unless people actually get out there and vote. And so my focus until the bell rings tomorrow is to do everything I can to encourage people to do just that.
Well, we thank you for taking some time. Pete Buttigieg, who today is campaigning for fellow Democrats, but otherwise is Transportation Secretary. We'll see you soon.
Thanks very much.
Take care. With just one day until Election Day, candidates are pulling out all the stops to win over last-minute voters. We'll check in with other political correspondents across the country. Coming up, you're streaming Red and Blue, reporting across the political divide.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became this sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future?
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now.
When weather turns extreme.
Massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane.
Every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
We are so excited, we just can't hide it.
CBS Mornings are, well, everything your morning should be.
Let's do it!
Let's go! CBS Mornings, starting at 7.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Ed O'Keefe. We're in the final stretch of a key Senate race in Pennsylvania between Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Mehmet Oz. Let's head to Philadelphia, where Caitlin Huey-Burns is covering that race for us. Caitlin, good to see you.
Hey, Ed, great to see you, too. Well, the campaigns have made their closing arguments, essentially, and now it's all about getting that every last voter to show up. And you know Pennsylvania as well as I do that every last vote will count. To kind of see what the ground efforts were, we followed a group of volunteers that were contacting people who had filled out their ballots, their mail-in ballots incorrectly, either missed a signature or missed a date or some other thing, contacting them, actually driving them to City Hall or their election office to go ahead and fix those ballots. We encountered one woman who went in to address her problems and found out that her father and other members of her family had also incorrectly filled out their ballots just by missing the date. Take a listen to what she had to say.
How would you feel not knowing that your vote counted?
I would feel awful. I would feel awful if I find out later, after the fact, that the vote that I submitted did not count. And that, especially if the other person that I did not vote for won.
So she said she would feel terrible if she hadn't have known, if she hadn't had discovered that she forgot to put the date on her ballot. So this is an effort that a lot of these volunteers are encouraging people to do. You can go into your election office and make sure that your ballot is filled out correctly. And Ed, as you know, in the case of a very close Senate race, especially as we're expecting here in Pennsylvania, these kinds of ballots will really make a difference. So campaigns are really trying to get every last voter and ballot in correctly.
Every vote counts, and especially in close races like the one they're having there in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. From the city of brotherly love, Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you. And I know you've got a big role tomorrow night in our pregame show, so to speak. So safe travels back to Washington for that. I want to turn now to Chris Van Cleve, who's out in the Grand Canyon state of Arizona in Phoenix. Chris, good to see you.
Ed, good to see you. The music you're hearing behind me is the tail end of a Kari Lake event here. Her closing message to this crowd was, vote like your life depends on it.
And I know, Chris, you had a conversation with Kari Lake over the weekend. You went with her down to the U.S.-Mexico border as she tries to make that part of her closing argument that she's going to focus on border security if she's elected governor. What did she tell you? And then let's hear a little bit of the conversation.
Sure. Border security has been a huge part of the Republican message across the ticket here in Arizona. Lake has said that if she is elected on day one, she will declare an invasion. She plans, she says, to finish the border wall. That may be a little challenging to do since a lot of the land that she would need to build it on is federal land. She's talked about seizing construction materials that belong to the federal government to build the wall. I asked her, how are you going to pay for it? Take a listen.
We protect people in South Carolina, Iowa, Idaho, Wyoming, every single state. You name the state, we're helping protect people when we finish this wall. And we think there is an appetite by Americans to build this wall. We think they'll help pay for it.
Do you think Wyoming will pay for the wall?
I think governors in other states would consider chipping in to help pay for the wall. We will be getting reimbursed by the federal government when we get a president who actually cares about the American people. It may be in 2024 that we get reimbursed, but we will be getting reimbursed for this wall.
Does the wall solve the problem?
It helps. It helps, but we need more resources in other ways as well. We need more law enforcement, National Guard. We have other governors in their National Guard.
Now, her opponent, Katie Hobbs, when I asked her about this plan, she laughed and said border security is the purview of the federal government and that the governor of Arizona needs to focus on solutions for Arizona that don't waste money battling the federal government. Instead, try to convince the federal government to do a better job on the border. There is certainly agreement on both sides of the aisle here, Ed, that the border is a problem here in Arizona, that fentanyl coming across the border is a problem, but how to address it, very, very different answers.
We shall see. Close governor's race there, close Senate race. Kari Lake would like it to be known as Carizona if she wins. We'll see if that happens. And we know Chris Van Cleve will be there monitoring for us. And then, of course...
That hashtag is out there, Ed.
That's right. Take care, Chris. As if it wasn't close enough in Nevada and Arizona, there is, of course, Georgia. And we have Nicole Killian there in Kennesaw for us. Nicole, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Ed.
So you have been there, as we joke on our morning calls, you've kind of taken up residence in the Peach State. But give us a sense of what's going on there in these closing days, and answer the question I keep getting asked by people around here and by viewers and friends. Will there be a runoff in that Senate race? What's it look like?
Well, I think that's what everyone is wondering, because the Senate race has been so close. And when you look at the polls time and again, neither candidate, whether that's Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock or his challenger Herschel Walker, neither has really been able to clear the 50% mark consistently. So because of that, that's why there's a lot of speculation as to whether or not this race will go to a runoff. Senator Warnock told me today he plans to win. But I also spoke to Florida Senator Rick Scott recently, who was campaigning on Walker's behalf. Here's what he had to say, not only about the broad spectrum of the races across the country, but his prediction for this race here in Georgia. Take a listen.
The Democrats can't defend their positions right now. I mean, whether it's the inflation or the crime or the open borders, none of those things they can defend. So they're having a hard time, and that's what they have to do, because they've all voted for all these things. So he's running a good race. Oz is already heading the polls now, so we just get our vote out. I was in North Carolina, Ted Budd's winning. Ron Johnson, who's never been ahead before in his races, he's up at least 5. You look down here, Herschel, our polling shows Herschel's not going to have a runoff. He'll win without a runoff. It looks like we'll have a nice...
You don't think there's going to be a runoff?
I don't think there's going to be a runoff.
How decisive do you think it will be based on your numbers?
Well, if you look at it, he's running a good race. There's a lot of energy. You look at all the early voting. It's actually everywhere.
So as you heard from the NRSC chairman there, Rick Scott, very bullish about not only the state of affairs here in Georgia, but also throughout the country. But again, as we've seen, Democrats certainly rallying across the country to try to close a deal and try to hold the majority in the House if they can, and also in the Senate in these final closing hours as they make their last arguments to voters. Ed.
Nicole Killian in Kennesaw, Georgia, thanks to you. Thanks to Manny, Caitlin, Chris, and your teams. The midterms may be taking the spotlight tomorrow. The 2024 race is already weighing on the minds of many politicians. We're taking a closer look at what could be in store on that ballot. Stay with us. You're streaming Red and Blue.
Thinking about it.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. These migrants, they've been released. Explain the status that allows them to be released, to slow things down a little bit. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Hackers are stepping up their attacks to extort victims. Let's start with easy. Who's attacking? Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
I'm thinking about it.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS reports tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely.
As Taiwan faces threats and aggression,
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, there are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme,
Massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane.
every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather when it matters most on CBS Mornings.
People from every corner of America facing challenges.
Everyone is just looking for some type of connection.
Just raise your hand and say, hey, I'd like to help.
Coming together to find solutions.
We are going to do something about it.
Their stories are our stories.
Welcome to Eye on America.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When it comes to the money you spend every day, we have you covered every morning. Making money makes sense. Weekdays on CBS Mornings.
After decades in the public eye and public service, this mother-daughter duo is now talking about gutsy women. What's the gutsiest thing you've ever done? We go person to person with Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton and Chelsea Clinton.
Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform, inspire, and brighten your day.
I've been waiting patiently for something like this.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream on the free CBS News app Tuesday mornings.
Welcome back to Red and Blue. I'm Ed O'Keefe. We are, of course, just one day until Election Day 2022, but just 729 days until the 2024 presidential election. I say just with tongue firmly planted in cheek. Already, though, the list of potential GOP candidates is adding and scratching out some names. One man familiar with the Oval Office is already starting to make his 2024 intentions clear.
New nickname for our governor, Ron DeSanctimonious. Do you think he's been a little ungrateful and not ruling out running against you? What's behind the nickname?
Well, we'll see what happens, but in the meantime, we hope he gets elected. And no, I've always had a very good relationship with him, really, but let's see what happens.
There are those who do support him who think that the way to do this is that what makes him appealing is that you would get all of the Trump policies without any of the Trump baggage or controversies. How do you think about that?
Well, I don't think we have any baggage, frankly. People were fighting us for 4 years, and if you don't fight back, you don't have any baggage. But I fight back like nobody's ever fought.
Hey, that was former President Donald Trump speaking to WFOR CBS Miami's Jim DeFeeti. And joining me now is CBS News Chief Election and Campaign Correspondent Robert Costa. He's down at our election night Times Square studio, where I'm here at the other end of 10th Avenue at the Broadcast Center. Robert, I know you've been looking into this and what former President Trump may be thinking and planning for. What do you know?
Ed, good to be with you. Former President Trump will be in Dayton, Ohio tonight to rally for Senate Republican candidate J.D. Vance. That will be closely watched not only by Ohio voters, but by Republican strategists and consultants and potential contenders across the country. It has been known, and CBS News has reported for weeks, that former President Trump is moving toward a possible 2024 presidential bid. But we're going to watch tonight whether he leans into that in any explicit way, if he uses new language, new phrasing to articulate where he stands at this time. We're also going to be watching Mar-a-Lago on Tuesday night. He will be gathering friends, donors, and advisors at his Florida estate to watch the election returns and think through his political future.
That's right. He had hinted last night at that event in Florida, watch me in Ohio Monday night, which is what has piqued everyone's interest, that there might be something more coming, right?
That's exactly right. He's been teasing a potential run for a long time, though it's complicated for former President Trump. He's facing many legal challenges. The RNC and others are helping to pay his legal bills. If he formalizes a run tonight in Ohio, sometime in November, it's going to be very difficult for him to have any kind of legal help from the Republican world formally, because he would then be a federal candidate. So at this point, a lot of Trump allies say he is moving toward a 2024 presidential bid, but he may not get into it in a formal way because he wants to continue to gather some strength in terms of fundraising for his legal hurdles ahead.
There is another name who is making some moves because of the way he's been traveling and some of the other things he did today. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin, somebody who's also been hearing from supporters that maybe he should think about it. What do you know?
Glenn Youngkin's Political Action Committee today released a 90-second ad. The ad talked about Youngkin's efforts across the country throughout this past year to elect Republicans governor, and it showed how Youngkin is aligned in some respects with the Trump movement. He has supported people like Kari Lake running for governor in Arizona. And you also see Youngkin, she's an election denier, it should be noted. Yep. And he has supported more mainstream Republicans as well, like Brian Kemp, the conservative governor of Georgia.
Well, we'll see. Those are two names on it. Tom Cotton, the Arkansas senator, saying he's taking a pass. But there will be others. And we know, Robert, you and others here at CBS will be tracking it closely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And get ready for tomorrow night. That does it for today, though. You can stream Red and Blue Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern here on the CBS News Streaming Network. And be sure, of course, to join CBS News Streaming on Election Day tomorrow, beginning at 7 a.m. Eastern. Wall-to-wall coverage starts with Red and Blue at 5 p.m. We'll see you then.
When weather turns extreme,
Massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane.
every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.